Some of you may remember that about a month ago, I ranked every race and battle track in Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo. This was the game that kickstarted the Mario Kart series, and it's still really impressive for Super Nintendo standards. However, as cool as that game was back then, it was completely overshadowed by its sequel, Mario Kart 64. Released in 1996 for the Nintendo 64, this was the game that truly got the series going strong, and it's still constantly hailed by many as one of the greatest Mario Karts of all time. Not me though, I consider the game to be pretty good, and that's about it. Just like with Super Mario Kart, I'll always respect the game, but I wasn't around during the N64's heyday, so I don't have the same nostalgia as others. Regardless, one of my favorite parts about this game is the tracks. Despite how old the game is, the tracks are still pretty fun, and some of them hold up surprisingly well. So today, I'm going to rank all of them. And just like with my last video, I'll have a separate section where I'll briefly go over the battle tracks. This list will be based on how fun and creative the tracks are, as well as some of my personal preferences. So without further ado, let's go! 16. Wario Stadium. We're starting this list off with a track that I don't actually like. This course has you driving through a giant stadium with a bunch of Wario faces plastered on the walls. The track waves all over the place, and there's bumps and dips in the road that make driving a real hassle. On one hand, they make the track more interesting, but actually having to deal with this crap when racing is more annoying than fun. Combine that with how ugly the course looks and how unfitting the music is, and you've got a track that's conceptually cool, but the execution, not so much. 15. Rainbow Road. I know many people adore this track, but honestly, it isn't that good. Visually, it looks really cool with details like character outlines in the sky, and the music is freaking amazing. But that's all the good things I can say about it. First of all, this course is so long. It can take up to 6 minutes to complete at the slowest speeds. Also, for a track that's supposed to be the final challenge of the game, it is painfully easy to race on. Sure, there's some chain chomps roaming around, but they're really not that hard to avoid. I get how iconic this track is, but it is just tedious to complete. 14. Luigi Raceway. The very first track ever dedicated to Luigi, and it's just okay. You drive on a simple racetrack with some wide turns through this dimly lit tunnel, and next to these stands with advertisements all over. You can also drive by the audience that has this giant Luigi hat on it, which is cool, I guess. I don't really know what else to say. This is about as basic as a Mario Kart track can get. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this course, but when compared to other tracks in the game, it's definitely really lame. 13. Banshee Boardwalk. Despite probably being the most forgettable course in this game, it's pretty decent. You drive on a wooden track over some water in the middle of the night. There's a bunch of sharp turns, boos flying around, and this massive Cheep that leaps out of the water. You even go inside this haunted house sort of thing with bats flying around trying to mess up your driving. This is basically this game's version of the Ghost Valley tracks from Super Mario Kart. It's not bad, it's just a bit on the boring side, and again, really forgettable when compared to other tracks. 12. Moo Moo Farm. Not quite as good as Moo Moo Meadows from Mario Kart Wii, even though that track didn't exist yet, but still good. You drive through a little farm with cows roaming around and chirpy music playing in the background. The road is pretty wavy, and there's a few dips in the road to drive through. There's also a ton of Monty moles that hop out of the ground, and running into one absolutely ruins your day. Admittingly, the track is a bit too short for my liking, but it's just really pleasant to go through, and definitely one of the more memorable tracks from this game. 11. Sherbet Land. You race on a giant glacier that has many sharp turns and a large lake of freezing cold water in the middle. The track is very slippery since you're on ice, so your driving gets all wonky. There's also these penguins that slide around trying to slip you up, and you'll even go inside this massive cave with more penguins and these giant pillars of rock blocking your path. The track is pretty good, and I like the difficulty, but racing can be a bit irritating when you have to deal with ice physics, and the course as a whole is much flatter than other tracks in the game, but I still enjoy it. 10. Kalimari Desert. I'm not a big fan of desert levels that much, but this one is actually pretty solid. You cruise through a massive desert with very calming music playing as you race. The track for the most part is pretty empty, with only some cacti and plateaus in the background. The only true obstacle you'll run into is this train that passes by. A couple of times throughout the course, you'll pass over some train tracks, and if you're in the way of the train as it passes by, well, be prepared to rage. This course is a bit weird considering that there's not a whole lot to say, but it's a very peaceful track to race through, and I like to replay it every once in a while. 9. Koopa Troopa Beach. For some reason, there's not that many beach-themed tracks in the Mario Kart universe, but the ones that exist are pretty fun, including this one. You ride through a small beach that's apparently owned by Koopa Troopa. You can even see a rock shaped like him at the start. There's some ramps you can jump over, some palm trees, crabs walking around, and the water level is constantly changing, so you have a chance to beat the course faster. There's also this shortcut you can take if you have a mushroom that lets you skip a decent chunk of the track. Again, it's not the most exciting course of all time, but I still find it really enjoyable. 8. Toad's Turnpike. Despite the fact that racing on a public road like this will absolutely get you pulled over, I really like this track. This course takes place on a busy street during the sunset, so as you might expect, there are many cars driving along with you, and these cars can be a pain in the ass to avoid with their weird hitboxes, but that's honestly what makes it fun. They add some difficulty and make this otherwise dull course much more interesting. The only reason this isn't higher on the list is because the track design is a bit on the boring side. I mean, look at it. It's just a giant figure 8. But hey, I still enjoy this course, and it's one of the more memorable ones from this game. 7. Choco Mountain. Apparently, having a Choco Island wasn't enough for Nintendo. No, they needed a frickin' mountain. This may not be the best mountain track of all time, but I still really like it. You travel through a path carved into a mountain, so the track waves around a lot, and there's steep hills around the whole course. Well, almost the whole course. There's this one part that has Choco boulders falling from the sky, and the railing on the left is missing, so you have to be careful not to fall down there. While I admit this track can be a bit frustrating at times, I cannot deny how cool and fun it is. 6. Frappe Snowland. Sherbet Land was a pretty decent snow track, but I find Frappe Snowland to be a lot more enjoyable. This course has you driving on a wavy road that has snow all around it. There's even these giant snow statues of Yoshi and Mario, which is a nice detail. There's also some snowmen you'll have to avoid or else you'll crash, and the final part of the course has you racing in between these giant snow walls before crossing a bridge to the end. As generic as this track may look, it's surprisingly fun and provides a race that's fast-paced but very peaceful at the same time in a weird way. 5. Mario Raceway. While most Mario-themed tracks aren't that exciting, this one actually stands out. I admit that the theme isn't that interesting, it's just a basic racetrack, but I find it very pleasant and fun to race on. The course has a bit of depth to it, and I like the little details seen throughout, such as the Mario memorabilia and this pipe tunnel you can drive through. I don't think there's much else to say about this track, but I still enjoy it, and I would definitely prefer to race here than the other tracks I've listed so far. 4. Royal Raceway. There is definitely something royal about this track. This course is similar to Mario Raceway, but a lot better. The track layout is even more wavy with more ledges and places to take shortcuts, and there's this massive jump over the river, which makes you feel like a total badass. And you can even go explore Peach's castle in the corner over here. Again, the theme is pretty generic compared to most tracks, but I still find this course to be a lot of fun, and it has a much better design compared to most tracks in the game. 3. DK's Jungle Parkway. DK tracks are usually some of my favorite tracks in any Mario Kart game, and this one is no exception. You cruise through a massive jungle with lots of wide and sharp turns, and there's this massive jump in the beginning. You'll drive by the river, on this bridge, and through this dimly lit cave. There's also these coconuts that'll bonk into you if you veer off course, which is a cool touch. This may not be the most frantic track of all time, but that's okay. It's nice to have a more chill Mario Kart track every once in a while. 2. Yoshi Valley, a track with so many twists and turns that even the game can't tell what place you're in. As you've probably guessed, you drive through a huge valley with many different paths to take. All of them are very wavy, and there's a couple obstacles like these little spiky guys and a massive spinning Yoshi egg near the end. For me, this course perfectly blends being difficult and fun at the same time. It's nothing too amazing, but for N64 standards, it's a really good time. 1. Bowser's Castle. It may not be my favorite Bowser Castle track, but it's definitely one of the hardest courses of all time. The turns are insanely sharp, the thwomps scattered around ruthlessly try to crush you, and there's a couple places where you can fall into giant pits of lava. On top of that, the setting and tone is amazing, and the music is very haunting. This is easily one of the most memorable Bowser Castle tracks of all time. Again, it's not my favorite, but it's a really awesome course, and is, in my opinion, the greatest track from Mario Kart 64. But we can't let the racetracks have all the fun, so let's quickly run through all the battle tracks and see how they compare to each other. 4. Big Donut. Well, at least they got the title right, but that's literally all it is. A giant circle with a huge pit of lava in the middle. There's a few big chunks of bricks scattered on the track, but other than that, it's nothing exciting. 3. Skyscraper. It's similar to Big Donut, being that it's basically a giant circle, but the visuals are more interesting, and there's more holes in the ground that are more tricky to avoid. Though, it's more imperative that you don't fall off, since getting back up takes forever. 2. Double Deck. The repeated colors and patterns make it a bit hard to navigate, but this one has multiple levels and paths to drive on, making it way more interesting and fun to battle on than the other two I've listed. 1. Block Fort. Even I cannot deny the greatness that is Block Fort. The visuals are pretty cool, there's a ton of places to drive and use items strategically, and it's just fun to roam around. Also, there's no intrusive gimmicks, but it's unique enough to stay interesting. It truly is the perfect battle track for Mario Kart. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then make sure to give it a like, and let me know down in the comments which one of these tracks is your favorite. Also, subscribe to my channel with notifications on so you'll know when I post more videos like this. Have a great day, stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.